A Mortal's Journey to Immortality Episode 173. Han Li and Marquis Nanlong had an agreement to search for treasures to protect Master Tsong Kuan's cave dwelling. On their journey, while passing through the lush wilderness, a region bordering the Mulan grassland that stretched for nearly 10,000 li, Han Li suddenly stopped in midair. This naturally startled Marquis Nanlong and the others, who also stopped in alarm. "Fellow Taoist Han, why have you stopped?" the old woman asked with a frown and some displeasure. "Haven't any of you fellow Taoists noticed anything amiss?" Han Li asked expressionlessly. "What do you mean by that, fellow Taoist?" a dark-skinned man asked with some surprise, appearing beside Han Li in a flash. Hearing this, Wang Tiangu and the old man from Baishan exchanged a glance, a look of surprise appearing on their faces. "Actually, even if I didn't say anything, some of you fellow Taoists should have noticed," Han Li said with a grim expression. "We've flown through the sandstorm for such a long distance, yet we haven't encountered a single spellcaster. Not to mention, these spellcasters are all concentrated in the middle of the blockade, and the surrounding scenery hasn't changed at all. What does this mean? I'm sure you all know, fellow Taoists. Someone is secretly ambushing us with a restriction." After hearing this, the dark-skinned man also spoke with a displeased expression. Golden light then flashed in his eyes as he continuously scanned the surroundings. "It seems you're not wrong. I also feel something strange. It appears we have indeed been detected by the enemy, and they are using spells to deal with us. It seems we have no choice but to fight a big battle," Marquis Nanlong said, nodding in agreement after a moment of silence. Hearing this, the others showed no panic. It seemed everyone understood that if these spellcasters only dared to trap them with restrictions, it meant there weren't many high-level spellcasters present. Otherwise, they would have already swarmed them. However, they couldn't afford to be trapped for too long. Once Mulan reinforcements arrived, the trouble would escalate significantly. Colorful lights flashed around the old woman and the others. No longer concealing themselves, they each unleashed their divine abilities and began to assault the surrounding restriction. Han Li also casually flicked his hand. 3 streaks of green light shot out, growing rapidly in the wind, and in an instant, transformed into 3 green-gold rays heading towards the yellow sand not far away. Under everyone's attacks, a ripple-like fluctuation suddenly appeared. Then, yellow light flashed, and the restriction was easily torn to shreds, like thin paper. Seeing such an easy success, the others were somewhat surprised and puzzled. Han Li, however, remained expressionless. He transformed into a streak of light and shot out from the opening. How much power could a hastily set-up restriction truly possess? It was perfectly normal for it to be broken by a single strike from them. There was nothing to hesitate about. Seeing Han Li's decisive action, the other old monsters were stunned for a moment before immediately understanding and following closely behind. Once outside, although sand still flew everywhere, it was clearly without the oppressive feeling they had experienced within the restriction. Han Li felt a slight sense of relief. He swept his spiritual sense around, intending to discern the direction before acting. But just then, Han Li's expression changed. His eyes narrowed slightly as he stared at a certain spot in the yellow sand, floating motionless in the air. At this moment, faint blue light flickered in his pupils, appearing somewhat eerie. His face, however, remained calm and serene, giving no hint of what he was thinking. "Fellow Taoist Han, what are you doing here?" Just then, Marquis Nanlong, who had caught up from behind, saw Han Li staring motionless. He swept his spiritual sense in that direction, but found nothing unusual. Han Li replied, "Nothing. I'm just pondering which direction we should be heading," Han Li said, turning his head. Marquis Nanlong, with his usual expression, remarked, "In these ghostly sandstorms, spiritual sense is useless. How can one discern anything with just the naked eye? This marquis has a soul-stabilizing compass here, a treasure perfectly suited for situations like this," Marquis Nanlong said dismissively. Then, he rubbed his waist with one hand and pulled out a flat, round, pale red jade plate. Marquis Nanlong held the treasure in one hand and formed a hand seal with the other. A rapid, rustling sound emanated from his mouth. He spread his 5 fingers, and a golden light shot out from his palm, striking a flowing rune on the surface of the round plate. Golden and red lights then burst forth from the plate. Han Li's heart stirred. He glanced at the treasure, seeing golden dots on the plate that revealed a strange pattern. It subtly contained celestial phenomena like stars, sun, and moon, appearing exceptionally peculiar. Han Li noticed that the old man from Baishan and the others had also gathered around with curious expressions. Marquis Nanlong paid no attention to this, merely concentrating on the pattern on the round plate. A moment later, he flipped his hand, and the treasure disappeared. He then briefly commanded, "Follow this Marquis." After saying this, Marquis Nanlong transformed into a ball of golden light and shot diagonally away. The old woman, the cold-faced cultivator, and the others followed closely without a word. Clearly, they had considerable faith in the judgment of this nascent soul mid-stage cultivator. As for Wang Tiangu, black light flashed around him, and he once again took Wang Chan and Yan Rian with him, following in a streak of light. However, as he passed Han Li, this elder of the ghost spirit sect subtly glanced at him. Then, as if nothing had happened, he brushed past Han Li. Han Li's lips curved slightly in a faint smile as he looked back, vaguely seeing Wang Chan in the black light, head bowed and not daring to glance in his direction, looking unusually obedient. On the contrary, the beautiful Yan Ruyan's eyes flickered, and her calm gaze lingered on Han Li for a moment before she turned her delicate hand. Seeing that he was about to fall behind alone, Han Li smiled indifferently. A green light flashed around him, and he was about to fly away. However, before flying off, he subconsciously looked back at the direction he had been staring at earlier. After a strange expression flashed across his face, he suddenly let out a cold laugh and shot through the air. In a flash, Han Li's figure vanished without a trace in the sandstorm. The place immediately became exceptionally quiet. But after only a short while, at the spot Han Li had originally looked, a dark, gaping hole, glowing with yellow light, appeared without any warning. From it crawled out a pitch-black, shiny demon worm. This demon worm was astonishingly huge, about 6 zhang long and 4 zhang wide, with a flattened, round body. What was even more terrifying was that, besides a dozen eerie yellow secondary eyes, the demon worm's triangular head also had several slender antennae and a pair of large, sharp fangs, which gleamed with a chilling light, making it look terrifying. On its back were 4 transparent, thin, reddish wings, gently vibrating. And on the back of this terrifying demon worm stood 3 figures of varying heights. One person was enveloped in dazzling white light, making it impossible to look directly at them. Another was entirely shrouded in a verdant mist, their figure indistinct. The last person's entire body constantly flickered with pale blue electric arcs, like a thunder god's warrior. "Grandmaster, are we just letting them leave like this? This isn't good, is it?" The figure enveloped in white light asked, looking in the direction where Han Li and the other cultivators had disappeared. His words subtly revealed some concern. The figure in the verdant mist scoffed, speaking in a displeased tone. "If we don't let them leave, can a mere illusion array truly trap them? Don't forget, most of these people are old nascent soul stage cultivators, all at the same level as me. Even the 2 weakest ones are late core formation stage cultivators. For our yellow sand tribe alone to keep them here is wishful thinking. But how do we explain this to Grand Master Mu of the Sky Peak tribe? He personally sent us here, telling us to use every means possible to trap these cultivators. This time, the vanguard tribes are all under his temporary command, and Grand Master Mu has already gone to contact the Grand Masters of the other tribes. Why don't we activate our tribe's sacred artifact, the Millstone Formation? Even if it can't severely injure these nascent soul cultivators, it can still trap them for a while." The figure in white light was still uneasy and suggested. "No, don't," the figure in the verdant mist immediately interjected. "How can the 36 demon millstone banners be used casually? Our yellow sand tribe's ancestors have had a rule for generations. Unless it's a time of tribal annihilation, those sacred banners must never be used lightly." Moreover, with the divine abilities of these cultivators, even if we truly trap them for a short while, what if they retaliate and damage some of the banners? How would we cope? Without our tribe-protecting sacred artifact, how can we maintain our position among the top 10 tribes of the allied army? We might even be coveted by those smaller tribes. It's not impossible for a tribal annihilation crisis to occur. The figure in the verdant mist flew into a rage, scolding unceremoniously, "Disciple, you are reckless." "Thank you for the Grand Master's reminder." The spellcaster in white light quickly apologized, his face covered in cold sweat. "Considering you've only recently become a master, I'll let it slide this time. But don't let it happen again. Anyway, it's not like we didn't make a move. It's just that these people's divine abilities are too powerful, we simply couldn't trap them. That Grand Master Mu certainly has a good plan. He wants our Yellow Sand tribe to exert ourselves to trap them, and then after both sides are injured, he and others will come to reap the benefits. He will naturally take the lion's share of the credit and spoils. Otherwise, the Sky Peak tribe also has its own tribe-protecting treasures. Why don't they bring them out to stop the enemy? I think he has ill intentions, using this opportunity to retaliate against our Yellow Sand tribe, the Grand Master in the Verdant Mist said coldly. He seemed to have a very bad impression of Grand Master Mu. Grand Master Mu is probably indeed planning this. After all, our two tribes have never been very harmonious. But now we are just an allied army, not truly subordinate to each other. Such a matter of greatly sacrificing our strength to benefit others naturally doesn't need to be taken seriously. Moreover, with the terrifying speed of the Sky Peak tribe's treasure, the Wind Chariot, it might not be impossible to catch up to these few people. At that time, it'll be hard to say who wins and who loses. However, as long as they can drag these people until the main force arrives, it will naturally be a great victory. The Mulan Spellcaster, enveloped in electric arcs, spoke, calmly analyzing. Although the Wind Chariot's speed is astonishing, if they wait to gather enough people before setting off, it might be too late, the Grand Master in the Verdant Mist said, disagreeing. Whether they can catch up to those cultivators or not doesn't have much to do with us anymore. What I'm puzzled about is that the young man who first broke out of the formation seemed to have discovered us hiding in the illusory void. This is quite strange. My illusory void worm is one of the famous exotic insects from ancient times. Although its combat power isn't strong, it naturally possesses the divine ability to temporarily tear open spatial rifts and is most adept at hiding in place. Although this one is still a larva, its ability to tear open space and time is extremely limited. Yet, two nascent soul mid-stage cultivators on the other side didn't detect the illusory void, while a nascent soul early-stage cultivator sensed it. It seems that young man is no ordinary person. He either cultivates some special secret art or possesses an extremely powerful detection treasure. This Grand Master pondered for a moment, then said contemplatively, a trace of surprise still lingering on his face. Hanli, following behind Marquis Nanlong and the others, finally flew out of this massive wind formation that stretched for dozens of li. During this time, not a single spellcaster appeared to block them, clearly having received instructions from someone. This reminded Hanli of the unusual situation he had inadvertently discovered when breaking out of the formation. It was truly a coincidence. At that time, because his spiritual sense couldn't penetrate the surrounding sandstorm, he had no choice but to inject spiritual power into his eyes to test the divine ability of the Mingqing Spirit Eyes. After all, he had already wiped his eyes with the Mingqing Spirit Water many times. He could now test what the effect would be, and the result greatly exceeded his expectations. The originally hazy yellow sand, under the sweep of his spirit eyes, was easily seen through. This filled him with pleasant surprise. However, he then became astonished. In the sandstorm not far away, he actually saw a round, dark shadow, over 10 zhang in diameter, existing within it. Startled, the spiritual power in his eyes receded, and the dark shadow disappeared with it. What he saw with his naked eyes was still nothing but sandstorm. Hanli, startled, used his spirit eye divine ability to check again, and the dark shadow reappeared in its original position, as if it had never vanished. This time, Hanli increased the spiritual power in his eyes, and the dark shadow gradually became a bit clearer, allowing him to vaguely see several human figures moving within it. Even with more spiritual power injected, he could only see to this extent. It seemed this was the limit of his Mingqing Spirit Eye's divine ability. Hanli now understood that someone was using divine abilities there, secretly observing them nearby. Although he didn't know what kind of astonishing divine ability this was, one that could even deceive 7 nascent soul cultivators, those who could appear here were undoubtedly spellcasters. It seemed the other party also knew that their group was powerful and did not want to sacrifice themselves in a head-on fight, merely monitoring from the sidelines with cold eyes. In this case, Hanli also didn't expose their presence. Instead, he pretended not to know and left, figuring these people wouldn't dare to come out and block them again. Having left the yellow sand wind formation, Hanli and the others immediately activated their escape lights. The few of them transformed into a series of streaks of light, breaking through the air at full speed. They knew that although they had bypassed the Spellcasters' vanguard, the main force of the Spellcasters would arrive soon. If they couldn't escape this lush wilderness within a short time, their lives would truly be in danger. Whether the Spellcaster army's mid to high-level cultivators attacked them individually, or countless Spellcasters swarmed them, they would all be in deep trouble. Marquis Nanlong and the others remained silent, simply accelerating their flight with their heads down. With their profound cultivation under acceleration, in just half a day, they vaguely saw a patch of green on the distant ground. They had finally reached the edge of the Mulan grassland. All right, we can finally breathe a sigh of relief. It seems this time we've escaped danger. Marquis Nanlong, who was leading the way, let out a long breath and a smile appeared on his face upon seeing the situation. At the same time, he slowed down his escape speed. After such a long time of consuming a large amount of magic power, even he was somewhat exhausted. The others were no better off and also slowed down their escape speed. Indeed, nothing happened even after reaching here. Even if those Mulan people regret it, they won't be able to catch up to us, a dark-faced man said with relief, clearly believing they had escaped danger by now. Don't be careless. There are many formidable characters among the Spellcasters, possessing incredibly powerful divine abilities. The old man from Baishan had just spoken these words when he suddenly let out a light exclamation and, with a solemn expression, looked back. Han Li's heart stirred at this. Just as he was about to say something, a piercing roar faintly echoed from a distant place behind them. In an instant, this strange roar grew 3 times louder. Everyone's expression changed drastically, and they all looked back. They saw white light flashing on the distant horizon, a seemingly small ball of light rapidly approaching them at an astonishing, incredible speed. Oh no, that's a Spellcaster's wind chariot. The people inside must be Spellcasters of the same rank as us, otherwise, they wouldn't dare to pursue us. The old man from Baishan recognized the flying object at a glance, his expression immediately turning to one of shock and anger. There are 5 Spellcasters inside, all nascent soul stage cultivators like us, Wang Tiangu said with a grim expression after sweeping his spiritual sense over them. It seems they don't want to defeat us, but rather to entangle us and, by time, waiting for reinforcements to arrive. We cannot get entangled in a fight with them. There are 5 Spellcasters on their side, and we cannot defeat them in a short time. Moreover, once we start fighting, we won't be able to escape. Let's split up and each use our divine abilities to escape individually. Here are a few jade slips, one for each of you, with an address recorded inside. After we split up, we'll gather here again in 3 days, Marquis Nanlong said hurriedly, immediately taking out several identical jade slips from his robes. He tossed one to each person. In this brief delay, the distant wind chariot was already clearly visible. Fellow Taoists, take care. See you in 3 days. Marquis Nanlong no longer delayed. His entire body enveloped in golden light, he shot diagonally away. The old man from Baishan, with a grim expression, transformed into a white streak of light and departed, heading in a different direction from Marquis Nanlong. After receiving the jade slips, the old woman and the others also activated their secret arts and scattered in all directions without lingering. The dark-faced man's entire body emitted several feet of pale yellow light. He agilely pounced towards the ground below and instantly disappeared into the earth, having used an earth escape technique to leave. The old woman's hand glowed with a shimmering light, and a dazzling silver-white crane hairpin appeared in her grasp. She blew a mouthful of spiritual energy onto the treasure, and a white-feathered spirit crane, enveloped in white mist, immediately appeared before her. With a flash of her figure, the old woman stood precariously on the crane's back. After the white crane let out a long cry, the woman and the crane were over 100 jong away. As for the cold-faced cultivator, his entire body glowed brightly. After forming a hand seal, he merged with some unknown treasure, transforming into a silver flood dragon that shot upwards through the air and disappeared into the clouds. Wang Tiangu, Wang Chan, and Yan Ruyan, the three of them, used some unknown ghost spirit sect secret art and together transformed into a thick black streak, shooting out continuously. In an instant, the three of them became a black dot, their escape speed astonishing. Han Li's movements were also not slow. Almost at the same time he received the jade slip from Marquis Nanlong, a line of red light and a crimson cloak appeared out of thin air on his body. After identifying a direction, he unhesitatingly injected a large amount of spiritual power into the cloak. A whistling sound emanated from the cloak, and a brilliant light burst forth. Han Li transformed into a ball of bloody light and shot out. His speed was not much slower than anyone else's. He even had the leisure to glance back at the pursuing wind chariot. Although the chariot was still far away, Han Li's powerful spiritual sense allowed him to see it clearly in the blink of an eye. The treasure's appearance was extremely peculiar, resembling a pure white, square handcart. It had no spirit beasts pulling it from the front, nor wheels underneath. Instead, on the left and right sides of the chariot body, each wing extended 7 palms long, dark red, and wooden. Floating patterns shimmered on them, and 5-colored fluorescent light flowed continuously. Han Li looked closely, tears in his eyes, only to discover with surprise that the wind-chasing chariot was pure white and delicate, forged and assembled from unknown beast bones. It faintly exuded a fierce and ominous aura. Because of the white light obscuring it, Han Li could only roughly see the figures of a few people sitting inside the chariot. Since he had never fought with cultivators of this type, Han Li didn't dare to easily use his divine sense to probe the wind-chasing chariot. Instead, he turned around and once again flapped the blood-colored cloak on his body, fleeing towards the Mulan grassland to the south. In a short while, Han Li and the other 9 people had flown more than 10 li away. The wind-chasing chariot, however, closely pursued them to where Han Li and the others had just parted. This made Han Li involuntarily look back at the chariot again. As a result, the wind-chasing chariot suddenly stopped. Then, after a few flashes of white light, 4 figures, one after another, descended from the chariot. They were dressed in various styles, 3 men and 1 woman. Afterward, these 4 cultivators gathered and discussed for a few moments. Then, they also split into 4, each pursuing Nanlong Ho and the others. In Han Li's direction, no one happened to pursue him. Han Li felt a sense of relief in his heart. Just as he was about to let out a long breath, he had a change of thought and suddenly felt that something was wrong. Almost at the same time, the white light of the previously stopped wind-chasing chariot flashed wildly a few times, and it shot towards Han Li. The piercing sound of the chariot was like a brain-drilling demonic tune, making Han Li's face, enveloped in bloodlight, turn grim. But Han Li then let out a cold snort, and the light around his body began to shine extremely brightly. Han Li's escape speed instantly increased by 30%. The blood-colored cloak itself also began to emit a low humming sound. 2 light masses, the blood light in front, the white light behind, separated by a distance of more than 10 li, began a chase, one fleeing, one pursuing. Although the cultivator's wind-chasing chariot was astonishingly fast, The blood-colored cloak on Han Li's body was also extraordinary. The two entered a stalemate, unable to close the distance even slightly for a time. A moment later, they chased one after another into the great grassland. Before long, the two light masses disappeared without a trace from above the edge of the grassland, chasing into its deeper parts. With Han Li's and the wind-chasing Chariot's astonishing escape speed, in a short while, they had penetrated more than 100 li into the Mulan grassland. Han Li, while activating the blood-colored cloak on his body and flying rapidly enveloped in bloodlight, also swept his divine sense behind him, a hint of surprise on his face. He had already activated the cloak's maximum power, yet not only had he failed to shake off the strange chariot behind him, but he had been caught up by a small portion of the distance. No wonder even the old man, with his nascent soul cultivation, had his face greatly changed upon seeing this chariot arrive. This wind-chasing chariot was indeed a top-tier flying magic treasure. It seemed that unless he used the Thunder Escape art or Blood Shadow Escape, he wouldn't be able to shake off the opponent. However, since Han Li had formed his nascent soul, he had never fought with cultivators of the same realm. Although he was quite confident in his divine abilities and magic treasures, he truly had no idea about his strength among nascent soul cultivators. After all, nascent soul cultivators wouldn't easily fight. Even in the few years he had been in Luoyun sect, the two elders of Luoyun sect had only discussed cultivation methods with him and had never truly sparred. Tian Tiancheng and Nanlong Ho had only sparred with him using divine sense, which couldn't reveal his true level at all. It seemed that the cultivator in the wind-chasing chariot behind him was a good opponent to gauge his cultivation. Moreover, he was quite interested in the spiritual arts of cultivators. If he could defeat or even kill the opponent, that would naturally be best. If not, it would be easy to escape by using the Wind Thunder Wings. However, the fight with the opponent couldn't drag on for too long, otherwise, delays could lead to complications. Furthermore, being in the Mulan grassland now, it was even more important not to prolong the battle. Han Li quickly made a decision in his mind. As his body flashed with blood light a few times, it immediately dimmed. Instead, a burst of green-tinged light erupted. At the same time, his figure flew in a large circle, then turned to face the rear, coldly gazing at the white light that was closing in. Han Li waved his sleeve, and dozens of green sword lights surged out, forming layers of green sword barriers in front of him, like fish scales, after a low hum. The momentum was astonishing. For his first battle against another nascent soul cultivator, Han Li naturally wouldn't be careless. In addition to the 72 azure bamboo cloud-swallowing swords, he also reached for a spirit beast pouch at his waist and threw it into the air. The three-colored gold-devouring beetles transformed into a giant insect cloud and appeared in the air. But as Han Li let out a sudden shout, all the flying insects circled once, then directly rushed downwards. Golden light flashed in Han Li's eyes. He raised both hands, and two green magic seals struck into the insect cloud. Immediately, the insect cloud, enveloped in green light, instantly submerged Han Li within it. A moment later, three-colored insect armor appeared on Han Li's body. It was ancient and simple, shimmering with a faint green light. Coincidentally, as Han Li stopped, the wind-chasing chariot behind him instantly caught up. The cultivator in the chariot just happened to witness the astonishing scene of the heavy armor forming within his sight. The flying chariot, which had been chasing recklessly, suddenly slowed down significantly and stopped when it was still over 100 zhang away from Han Li. Han Li glanced at it expressionlessly, ignoring it. Instead, he took the opportunity to flip his hands, and a flower basket appeared in one palm, while a small bell emerged in the other. Then, without a word, he tossed the small bell towards the opponent. Fluorescent light flashed, and the small bell grew against the wind, instantly transforming into a giant object the size of a staff, shooting menacingly towards the opponent. At the same time, with a thought from Han Li, the 72 flying swords in front of him flashed with illusions, each splitting into three, forming over 200 green sword lights. Then, Han Li softly uttered the word, "Go." A soft hum arose, and all the sword lights flashed, unleashing their power together. A giant green-red wave, over 100 zhang long, rolled towards the opponent, closely following the silver bell, intending to crush the wind-chasing chariot into fragments. The silver bell, which had been sent out first, had already begun to unleash its power. As it reached above the flying chariot, it spun rapidly, and low bell sounds emanated one after another. Visible faint silver waves, centered around the giant bell, rippled outwards in circles, shining down on the wind-chasing chariot below. If the cultivator in the chariot didn't defend, Hanli believed this attack would be enough to make the opponent suffer greatly. After all, although the bell was still the same ancient treasure and hadn't changed, with Hanli's great advancement in cultivation, once this treasure was used, its power had almost doubled, far surpassing its previous power during the core formation stage. Of course, the cultivator in the flying chariot couldn't just take it. The wind-chasing chariot's wings moved slightly, and the chariot instantly shot back more than 10 zhang, just escaping the range of the sound waves. Then, white light burst forth from the chariot, and a figure suddenly flew out from the white light, floating above the flying chariot. At this moment, the green giant wave, which had followed, had also arrived, striking down fiercely. Seeing this, the figure on the flying chariot, without panic, waved a hand, and blue light flared. A layer of deep blue light shield appeared above his head, the size of a staff. The moment the green wave struck the light shield, a bursting sound erupted. Although the light shield swayed and flickered incessantly, it remained unharmed for the time being. Hanli, with his eyes half closed in the distance, had a slight change in expression. At this moment, the cultivator chanted incantations, and then opened his mouth. A slender blue thread shot out. In a blink of an eye, it transformed into a giant blue python, lunging out from the light mist, fiercely striking Hanli's green sword light. Immediately, green and blue lights intertwined, and rumbling sounds continuously emanated. At this point, the cultivator raised a hand, and a magic seal struck the wind-chasing chariot below. The flying chariot rapidly deformed and shrank. After becoming only palm-sized, it automatically shot into the cultivator's hand and was calmly stored in his storage pouch. Then, this person raised his head and looked at Hanli, revealing a grim, gaunt face. Hanli's gaze narrowed slightly. This was an old man over 60 years old, with a gaunt face. Strange green tattoos were etched on both sides of his cheeks. He wore a uniquely styled blue tight-fitting robe. But what surprised him was not these things, but the astonishing spiritual energy fluctuations from the opponent. He was a cultivator at the peak of the early nascent soul stage, about to enter the middle stage. No wonder he so easily blocked his 2 waves of attacks. Hanli had also clearly seen that the opponent's blue light shield was not conjured out of thin air, but was emitted from a fist-sized round pearl he held in one hand. As for the blue monster, after a sweep of his divine sense, he did not find any transformed physical treasure. It was truly composed entirely of spiritual energy. This made Hanli even more wary. He saw his expression turn cold, and the flower basket treasure in his other hand began to flash with white light, about to be sent out as well. Fellow Taoist, although your divine abilities are not low, you're a bit too impatient, aren't you? The old man, seeing Hanli's actions, said with a solemn expression, "I haven't even spoken yet. Why did you attack without a word?" His voice was slightly stiff. What is there to say between cultivators and spellcasters? Hanli frowned and said coldly. However, he still stopped the attack with a thought, causing the treasure to cease its assault. It floated motionless in the air. As for the flower basket in his hand, it also continuously emitted spiritual light. He wanted to hear what this spellcaster had to say. That is true, but when cultivation reaches our level, sometimes there's no need to fight to the death. As long as your answer satisfies me, Mu, this Grand Master can also let you go. The old man chuckled, saying indifferently, "Answer? I have nothing good to tell you. Instead, I have a few questions I'd like to ask you." Hanli stared at the old man, a hint of sarcasm on his lips. What the other party wanted to ask, He could guess 8 or 9 times out of 10 without thinking. So many nascent soul cultivators suddenly appearing here, anyone who saw it would be surprised. It seems fellow Taoist is rejecting my good intentions. The old man, hearing Han Li's words, his face instantly darkened. Han Li snorted coldly, then suddenly pointed lightly at the high sky in front. The green sword light, which had been entangled and tearing, twisted largely towards the center. Immediately, a giant sword, about 20 to 30 zhang long, appeared in the air. After a swift, lightning-fast slash, the blue giant python was immediately cut into several sections. Then, the giant sword unceremoniously continued its downward slash, intending to cleave both the light shield and the old man into ashes. Seeing this situation, a hint of solemnity flashed across the old man's face. He no longer wasted words and raised a hand. The fist-sized treasure pearl was instantly sent into the air by him. Then he opened his mouth again, and a ball of vital energy directly sprayed onto the surface of the pearl. The treasure pearl shimmered with blue light and began to spin rapidly in midair. Streaks of blue threads spun out from the round pearl, and in a blink of an eye, a massive blue silk net appeared beneath the light shield. At the same time, the old man chanted incantations, and after forming a hand seal, the blue spiritual light on his body instantly shot up into the sky, forming a large blue light mass that floated unsteadily above his head. The giant sword had already slashed down, colliding fiercely with the light mist. As Han Li expected, the giant sword formed by over 200 sword lights could not be easily blocked by this light mist. A tearing sound erupted, and the light mist was almost effortlessly split in two. Then, the giant sword plunged into the giant net below. But the scene below somewhat surprised Han Li. As soon as the giant sword touched the net immediately flashed with blue light. The shimmering, slender net threads were surprisingly tough and firm. After the giant sword fiercely slashed a few times within the net, not only did it fail to break the net, but it was instead wrapped layer after layer by the net, under the old man's control. It was eventually trapped within. Although it wasn't completely restrained by the opponent, it was indeed difficult to break free for a while. Han Li frowned. Just as he was about to cast another spell, the old man opposite him made his move first. His face showed a hint of coldness, then his hands formed various strange hand seals like a spinning wheel. At the same time, streaks of colorful magic seals shot out rapidly from his hands, all striking the spiritual light mass above his head. Immediately, the blue spiritual mass began to contract and deform. Amidst the obscure incantations, it instantly burst open. Countless palm-sized, slender ice crystals then appeared out of thin air around the old man, shimmering with blue light, covering an area of 10 zhang. Green light appeared in the old man's eyes. He suddenly opened and closed his hands, pointing at Han Li, and uttered a chilling go. Instantly, the sky full of ice crystals, like a raging storm, all shot out with that sound, rushing over. Dense blue light instantly enveloped Han Li's location, completely covering it. The momentum was truly terrifying. This is a spiritual art. Han Li was startled, a look of surprise on his face. However, his hands did not stop for a moment. Without thinking, he sent out the flower basket treasure he had just activated. At the same time, he patted the spirit beast pouch at his waist, and another surge of 3-colored gold devouring beetles poured out from the pouch. Under Han Li's urging, they instantly surrounded Han Li. However, this time, the gold devouring beetles did not condense into anything, but instead danced and spun wildly nearby, forming an impenetrable insect shield. Han Li's figure became blurred. After the flower basket left his hand, it turned into a white mist, meeting the sky full of ice crystals that were shooting towards it. As a result, the portion of ice crystals that were hit head-on were swept up by the white mist, and in an instant, all were absorbed into it. Seeing this, the other ice crystals, as if sentient, split left and right and from both sides, shot around to the insect shield in front of Han Li. Continuous popping sounds rang out. The prismatic ice crystals were slightly delayed by the insect shield, but still tore open gaps and plunged into it one after another. The insect shield then returned to its original state, and there was no sound inside, as if nothing had happened. The old man was startled by this situation. His ice crystal art, at first glance, seemed similar to a cultivator's 5 elements ice thorn art, just with a greater number of ice crystals. But in reality, these ice crystals were all condensed from the profound cold energy he had cultivated himself. They were not only sharp and keen, but also extremely cold. Cultivators who didn't know their true nature, even if they could temporarily block them with protective magic treasures, would absolutely not be able to withstand the cold energy after the ice prisms shattered, which would freeze them. But now, these ice prisms shot in, and there was no news of them. How could this not make him feel shocked? The old man hesitated for a moment, just as he was about to use his divine sense to probe the situation inside the insect shield. A loud bang suddenly came from above his head. He felt a buzzing in his ears, then his vision went black. Unprepared, he almost fell directly from the air. The old man, startled and enraged, quickly rubbed his hands together and slapped himself a few times. A layer of white protective light suddenly appeared on his body. Only then did he regain his footing and look up. He saw that above his head, the silver bell had arrived at some point. The huge sound just now had come from this bell. At this moment, the bell shimmered with fluorescent light, and a second loud bang came out. Only this time, it was not aimed at the old man, who was now prepared, but instead released circles of sound waves, targeting the blue giant net and the struggling green giant sword wrapped within it. Not good. The old man was startled and immediately realized. He hastily tried to cast a spell to block it, but was clearly a step too late. As a result, the blue silk net, under the impact of those faint silver sound waves, actually broke apart inch by inch. The giant sword instantly broke free from its restraints and unceremoniously slashed fiercely at the old man again. The sword's edge descended, and an immense pressure already rushed towards him. Although the old man still had a layer of protective light to resist, how could he dare to face such an astonishing and powerful giant sword? His face turned pale, and his figure swayed. Enveloped in blue light, he shot back dozens of zhang, dodging the giant sword's strike. Then, he no longer hesitated and beckoned to the round pearl in the air. This magic treasure immediately flew to his head. After spitting a mouthful of vital energy onto it, it once again conjured a light mist to protect him. Only then did the old man look towards the opponent with a solemn expression. His face instantly turned pale. The insect shield opposite him had already dissipated amidst a buzzing sound, reforming into an insect cloud floating above Hanli's head. As for Hanli himself, he was holding a several-inch-sized azure ice flower in one hand and was calmly looking at him. As their gazes met, the coldness in the opponent's eyes made the old man's heart clench. But then his gaze shifted, not looking at Hanli, but staring intently at the small ice flower in Hanli's hand, a look of shock and uncertainty on his face. This ice flower, under the sunlight, was crystal clear and beautiful. It was exceptionally beautiful, but the old man didn't care about that. What he cared about was that, even at such a distance from Hanli, he, who had cultivated ice attribute spiritual arts for hundreds of years, still sensed an astonishingly cold and sharp spiritual energy from the ice flower. Although somewhat unfamiliar, it actually made the old man feel a sense of inexplicable awe. This secretly horrified him. In an instant, the old man pursed his lips and said with a grim expression, "The spiritual art I just cast, was it broken by you with this item? What kind of treasure is this? Fellow Taoist, could you tell me?" Hanli heard this and chuckled lightly. Perhaps it could be considered so. As for what this is, if you are willing to tell me about your spiritual art just now, I might be able to tell you a thing or two. Hanli said indifferently after a smile. What? You, a cultivator, are also interested in our spellcasters' spiritual arts? That's quite interesting. The old man's shock gradually faded, and his expression returned to its cold state. But Hanli could faintly discern from his flickering eyes the opponent's apprehension towards the ice flower in his hand. A cold smile couldn't help but appear at the corner of his mouth. He showed an expression as if he was too lazy to answer. The old man saw Han Li's expression, and his heart filled with rage. After a cold snort, he patted his storage pouch at his waist. Black light flashed in his hand, and something suddenly appeared. It was dark and turned out to be a seemingly small miniature mountain. Han Li was stunned. Before he could examine the item closely, the old man had already chanted incantations, then tossed the small mountain into the air. Immediately, black light flowed on the mountain's surface, and its volume rapidly expanded. In a blink of an eye, it grew to dozens of zhong in size and was still continuing to grow larger. Han Li, witnessing this, gasped in cold air. He pointed at the green giant sword without hesitation. The giant sword let out a soft hum, then transformed into a green-red light and shot directly above the small mountain. It fiercely struck downwards, slashing directly at the top of the small mountain. With a loud bang, shattered rocks flew everywhere and light burst forth. Green and black lights intertwined and collided. Han Li's eyes narrowed slightly as he looked at the top of the black mountain. His sword had cut a gash about 7 or 8 zhong long and a zhong deep. But it was clearly far from enough to cleave the mountain in half. Right before his eyes, the gash rapidly healed at a visible speed. Before he could deliver a second strike, it had already restored more than half. At this moment, the mountain had grown to over 100 zhong in size amidst the black light, no different from a real small mountain. Even Han Li, as bold and calm as he was, couldn't help but twitch his eyelids as he witnessed the towering black mountain before him. His face instantly turned grim. He didn't need to think to guess that if he were truly hit head-on by this mountain, no insect shield or insect armor would be able to withstand it. This item would instantly crush him to dust. At this moment, Han Li's giant sword slashed at the mountain a few more times, but it was completely ineffective. The old man chuckled, then pointed a finger at the mountain. With a whoosh, the mountain suddenly appeared above Han Li's head in the next instant, then smashed down fiercely. Han Li was greatly alarmed. He didn't have time to ponder how such a massive object could teleport. A thunderous sound erupted behind him, and he instantly disappeared without a trace in a flash of light. At a distance of dozens of zhong away, Han Li's figure reappeared, but with a pair of silver-white wind thunder wings on his back. Witnessing Han Li's instant disappearance, it was the old man's turn to be greatly startled. His face changed greatly, then his figure instantly shot back again, widening the distance between him and Han Li. He looked extremely cautious. However, his gaze at Han Li was filled with shock. At this moment, the old man finally understood one thing: the opponent was not an ordinary nascent soul early-stage cultivator. With such teleportation divine ability, he simply couldn't keep the opponent. This trip would likely end in failure. After all, with his cultivation, to use such a huge black mountain's instant teleportation ability, he could only do it a few times. Each time he cast the spell, it would greatly deplete his magic power. He dared not use it too much. Just as the old man was greatly alarmed and secretly contemplating retreat, Han Li looked at the black mountain, a hint of desire appearing on his face.